Anyway,
Awesome. So I actually am going to give my esteemed panelists another minute or two to come through on the back end. But I do see Tammy, I see Jay, which is awesome. So Jay, good to see you. Tammy, if you could start your video, that'd be awesome too. Hello, and your TCF gear, love it. Awesome. There's Nick coming through in the background, and we're gonna wait for Jackie, and then we're gonna kick things off. So I'm actually going to introduce myself in the meantime so we can spend all the time on the panel. So, hello everyone. My name is Jay Denson. I'm the Director of Member and Community Engagement with the Minnesota Technology Association. So, for those of you who were at the first week of Prepare to Launch, hello again. I was speaking during that first week and ran the panel, and I'm back for more discussion with awesome leaders in our community. And for those of you who are just joining for the first time this week, it's good to meet you. And I'm excited to kind of put these panelists in the hot seat and make them answer some difficult questions so that they can share some insight with you. In the meantime, oh, Jackie's here as well. We're all here. We're all ready to rumble. We have Jay, we have Tammy, we have Nick, and we have Jackie here to share insights about how to build authentic, meaningful relationships in this professional space. So I'm going to tell you now, these four are some of the best relationship builders I know. I've learned a lot of my ability to build relationships from this group. So I'm excited to have them share their insights with you. And before we get deep into the weeds of the questions, I'm going to have them kick off with just some quick introductions. So if we can start maybe with Tammy, share your name, your company, your role, and what your superpower is as a relationship builder. Um, then we can go from there. And then we'll go to Nick, Jackie, and we'll end with Jay. And then I'll start diving into some questions. So, Tammy, what is it? What's your superpower as a relationship builder? Oh, I think you're on mute. Our line of the year.
line of the year. You're right. You're on mute. Um, so my name is Tammy Morton. I work for TCF Bank in the Twin Cities, Michigan regional area bank. I get to lead a customer service team in IT along with a 24/7 service management team. Uh, I have been with TCF only a couple of years. My superpower is I am consistent with communication. I think it's not really a superpower because there's a trick to it, which is just have a calendar and put in dates that you want to remember. And so when I first start new jobs, I'm often a leader. And so I find out the start date of all my team members and I put in all their start dates in my calendar. I keep track of on my own personal calendar, even bad things that have happened in people's lives that are important to me, or marriages if I go to a wedding, and I keep track of all those in my calendar and just reach out to them on their special days. And people are often like, "Oh my God, how do you remember me?" I'm like, "Shoot, it was a calendar event. Sorry." Like, it's not special, but it's important to put time in those relationships that you care about.
Awesome. And I can attest, Tammy is telling the truth with this one. Just when I'm not expecting it, she'll text me or email me, and it's like the brightest point of my day. So consistency is definitely something she does well. Awesome. Nick, take it away. Name, company, and your superpower as a relationship builder.
Oh, first of all, Jade, so excited for this session. This is what a great connect. What a great discussion. So my name is Nick Hernandez, and I've been 30 years in the technology community. I was fortunate enough to work for high-tech startups that were funded in Silicon Valley and gained the confidence to start my own business and was CEO for 15 years of that management consulting firm. That's where I met Jade, through us intertwining our mission and purpose with Genesis Works. So we built a great culture. I was able to exit successfully from there. And now I'm with Coherent Solutions, which is a digital custom software product. So I think my superpower is really going in with the mindset of helping others as a high self motivator for me, but also leaving them better off than they were. So just, whether that's the interaction, whether that's good listening skills, whether that's imparting a little salt, otherwise known as wisdom, I intend to leave them better off.
It's true. Nick always leaves me with homework. So it's a good thing. I always walk away with some things I should focus on, which I love. Awesome. All right, Jay, and then we'll wrap up with Jackie.
So this is Jai Winston, and I have the fortunate opportunity to work for the Knight Foundation. So I lead our investments here in St. Paul, Minnesota. And the Knight Foundation is a national foundation that was founded by two brothers, John S. and James L. Knight, who were newspapermen. So they ran the largest newspaper company during the 20th century. And so as an opportunity that I get to make some meaningful investments in a community where they once owned and operated a newspaper to do things that will advance more opportunity for this community. And if I had to think about my special power, I would say it's building meaningful relationships, taking a little bit off of what Tammy was saying, you know, in terms of also remembering important dates of colleagues, et cetera. But really for me, particularly around just, you know, knowing the names of their kids, that means a lot to them. So really being intentional when I'm having these conversations, to know more about them, more than just the surface.
Awesome. Jai, so sorry about that. Actually, the reason Jai's on the panel is I asked someone in my network, who's the best relationship builder you know? And they said Jai, which is probably a really cool compliment. When someone thinks of a relationship builder, they think of you. So thanks for joining us today. Awesome. Jackie, last but certainly not least, name, company, role, what your superpower is.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for having me. Great conversation, great opportunity to learn from some folks who have a lot of experience in this space. So I'm Jackie Hartman. Right now I work for Cargill, and I am the lead of data management and governance. It's a global position. So I am helping Cargill's data get better across the globe, which is a super exciting and at times very overwhelming task because Cargill is a very, very big, complicated organization. I have a long history in technology and data leadership roles. I spent a lot of my time at Target. So it's great to see Target continuing to lead in the community, especially in really important conversations like this. My superpower, I have two, really good question asker and a very attentive, active listener.
Awesome. Accurate once again. So now let's dive into it. I kind of want to start at the top and ask, maybe Jackie, I'll turn back to you since you just spoke. What is a meaningful relationship and why is it important? Why should we care? Why should we be listening about meaningful relationships at 10:26 on a Friday?
10:26 or any time of day. So I think as humans, just fundamentally, we are all seeking meaningful connection with other humans. So fundamentally, I just think that's a big part of being human and having a meaningful, purposeful life. Meaningful connections in the workplace are an extension of that. It might just be a different model or a different variation. But to me, a meaningful connection is something that I feel. It's not necessarily a thinking process, it is a feeling process. And when I know I have made a meaningful connection, it is because there is some kind of like human, like connection. I mean, I don't want to keep using the word connection, but I can feel something, whether that's a little tingle or whether that is some sort of leap of curiosity, like, oh, we have this bridge between us. And so I would encourage you, like when you're looking at your relationships, whether they're professional or personal, whatever, think about a meaningful relationship in terms of how you feel, not necessarily how you think, even though that is a dimension of it as well.
A good point. People you want to be around, it just feels natural. You're inclined
Feels
to
good.
email them. You're inclined to reach out to them on LinkedIn, all those things. Such a good point. Awesome. So Tammy, I'm going to turn to you. Earlier today, this group of high school and college students learned about the relationship pyramid. So sponsors, mentors, partners, meaningful connections and colleagues, connections, contacts. So there's so many different types of relationships that you can have in the professional space. Where should these young folks start? Like, where should they spend their time now that they have a good sense of the different types of meaningful relationships they can have?
Did you say Tammy?
Yep, Tammy.
Okay.
The lucky one to answer this big question.
Okay. I think they're all important. I like the way the pyramid was written because it did help show the maturity of how relationships grow. And it's really important to build those connections that are like we were saying earlier, not necessarily in the area you want to grow your career, because it doesn't matter. Those connections know somebody who will be in that network or in that kind of career. It's important to build those relationships higher in that pyramid as you're going. And you can't have everybody as the top tier that was a connection. You will have to cultivate specific relationships along the way because you only have so much time. So I think as you're starting out, you spend a lot of time with connections and just see, as Jackie was saying, and Nick is like, who are you connecting with and who can you grow those human connections with more?
Awesome.
And who do you click with?
Yeah. So in some ways you can use the triangle or the pyramid to decide based on how you feel who should be moving up the nozzle and who are you content just to keep at the connection level. But all are important, essentially.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Awesome. So Jai, I want to turn to you really quickly. You rose really fast in your career. And I assume relationships and connections are a piece of that. Can you share with the audience, how did building meaningful relationships help transform your career and get you where you are today with the Knight Foundation?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, it was a huge part of me being able to get to where I am today. And so kind of taking it back a little bit, when I graduated from college, I had an amazing opportunity to work for former President Barack Obama. And so I was doing his fundraising with his finance director in Chicago. And one of the most important pieces of information she said to me was like, this is going to be a really exciting journey. You're going to meet a ton of folks. You're going to have a ton of colleagues that you're going to be working with. But what I think is most important is building relationships with these donors. And she was saying that because she said long after the campaign and that administration, there are still going to be CEOs, C-suite executives, et cetera. And so it's important to build a meaningful relationship with them. So I definitely took that advice to heart. And so the irony is, I've never fortunately had to ever apply for a job. It's always been, through the campaign. There was one of a major donor who worked at an investment firm and said, hey, I've enjoyed working with you. Would you be interested in coming to join our firm in Chicago? So of course I was like, yes. And that was extremely exciting. And I worked in Chicago for quite some time. And then working on some of the work that I was leading for this investment firm, I wound up meeting the CEO of this foundation. And through a series of conversations, he said, hey, would you be interested in moving to St. Paul, Minnesota? And so for me, I think I would like to think I'm a smart individual, but I think what really added a lot to it was the fact that I built these relationships with these individuals and they got to know me as an individual, but they also got to understand my working, they saw me in my professional capacity. So they got to see my skill set, what I'm able to do. And so when they had opportunities that they thought I might be a good fit for, instead of folks that were applying for it, they reached out to me and said, hey, there's a couple of opportunities. Are you interested in this one? If so, we would love to have you. And so I think, again, one of the things that they say, it's not who you know. I mean, it's not what you know, but who you know. And I think a part of it is you definitely need to be proficient, but it's extremely important to cultivate that network because as opportunities arise in the future and you get to meet more folks and share to them what you're passionate about, they're going to think of you. They're going to keep you in mind and say, oh, there's an opportunity that I think you would be a really good fit for. And so you want to take advantage of those opportunities. And I've been able to do that in my career professionally.
Such a good point, Jai. So basically, although school teaches us it's about what you know, being smart and talented isn't enough. People have to want to invest in you. People want to have to hire you. People need to be thinking of you when they're crafting up positions and thinking about opportunities. Such a good point. Nick, question for you. I think this group has gotten a sense that relationships are important. That's been like kind of the drum has been beat with that. The question I'm going to ask you is how do you start? How do you start building those relationships? Where's the tangible tactics for getting that job done and starting out building that network?
Great question. Thanks, Jade. I just had an experience come across email that I think is a stellar example. Very simple, very easy to apply. There is an executive that Coherent worked with several times, and somebody in his network, a young college-age individual looking for an internship, asked this executive if he knew how he could position himself for a summer internship in the marketing department. So the executive contacted our CEO.
Wow.
And suddenly now I have a meeting on my calendar next Tuesday to do a little orientation and see if there's a good fit with this young man in college. So number one rule, 3-foot rule. Who's around you, whether it's family, friends, people you associate with, people your father, your mother associate with, your teachers. Ask them. Once you have your goal and you're a little bit of a plan, but ask them, can you introduce me to someone who? So there's one example. The other example is family. My brother Dan works for Target. He set up the entire high tech, he and his team set up the high tech bars. He's inward facing corporate IT support. He's always taking in informational interview time with people.
Mhm.
My sister Angie works for Target. Angie Hernandez says counsel. So there's two within Target. If you want to pursue a legal path, you want to stay in tech. So they're right in front of you. Just ask. Be open and just ask.
Yeah, so in some ways it's important to not overlook the people in your immediate space, right? And in some ways, everyone on this call, the speakers, the panelists, we're now in your immediate space in some ways. So you can tap into us as a place to start too. Awesome, Nick. So Jackie, from your perspective, you obviously have led a ton of teams in the past and still are doing that now. What are some pitfalls that early career professionals should avoid? Like, what are some things that don't work? What are things that you've seen not translate well in your position?
Yeah, I'm gonna answer that question, and like three things come to mind. The first is similar to what Nick said. I think a lot of young people might not feel comfortable asking for support from other people. It might be intimidating, or it might be a little bit scary. And I would really encourage folks, when you see the type of people who either have an interesting role or have an interesting job, that you're asking them about that, and asking even further, if you like how they lead or you like what they offer, ask them to be a mentor. Not just, hey, can I meet with you for a couple minutes and we can have a discussion? But if you really find a connection, back to meaningful relationships, if you really find a connection, ask that person to be part of your life. And you will find people are super generous and really, really excited to share what they've learned and experienced with people, especially as they're starting out in their career. So that can be a pitfall, number one. A second one is not asking for help when you need help. And I think a lot of people want to give the impression, and I do this too, give the impression like I've got it all figured out. I have all the answers. And if I ask for help, it might be expressing a vulnerability that I'm not comfortable with. And so that fear keeps me from asking for help. And that help could be really meaningful, either in forming a personal relationship or taking the next step in whatever you want to do. The third one is underestimating or discounting what you have to offer and what you have to bring. And so one of the things that I see is people are like, oh, I don't have anything to bring to this person. I just keep asking for things and I'm not offering anything. You all have something to offer. And so think about what that is and come to those conversations with an offer and how you can make something better. So those are the three things that come to mind, Jade.
Yeah, I hope y'all were taking notes for that one. Those were which was really helpful. Tammy, I want to turn to you. I know you to have a ton of really great relationships, and because you and I are connected, I know how those things have helped you in your career. Can you just go into some storytelling a little bit and talk about how meaningful relationships have impacted you and where you are today at TCF or your role at Prime, or just kind of add some color to how meaningful relationships have shown up in your career?
Absolutely. That's a great question. I wanted to say when Mr. Winston was talking is that I have applied for thousands of jobs. I've been in IT for almost 20 years, but every job I've had is because of a connection. And so either somebody called me and said, this job would be perfect for you. My job at TCF, I knew the recruiter from Prime Therapeutics, and I called her and I said, hey, there's got to be something I can do at TCF. Like, I don't care what it is. There has to be something that I can do really well there. TCF was closer to my home. I needed to move for my family. And so it was really important to find something on the west side of the cities. And so as you build your connections and grow your pyramid, you end up having those connections across different areas. And you never know where you're going to connect. I think that's really important. I met Mr. Hernandez on a street in St. Paul. We were heading to a Genesis Works conference, and I was like, we're just too far apart. And I took my shoes off and I ran across the street and he held the door for me. And I didn't know who Nick was, but he was super kind and reached out later. And we've built a good relationship since then. And he's done the same for me and connected me with other people across the industry. And then they've done the same again. So it's important. I think we said it earlier, all relationships are important. And so you might not have the same level of connection with somebody, but be really mindful of how you interact with people, because you never know when that relationship is going to come back. At TCF, when I was interviewing, I looked through LinkedIn and said, like, who do I know who's there? And found several team members that I worked with at Unisys, 15 years ago, worked there now. So I reached out to them and I was like, do I want to go there? What do you guys think about it? And I hadn't talked to them in 10 years, but it was still important to get to really know the company and does it fit my values and do I want to be there? Now you're on mute, Miss Jade.
Good old mute. You would have figured this out by the 50th panel, but here we are. So Tammy, you actually brought up something that's interesting to me. I'm sure Nick couldn't forget the person that took off their shoes to run across the street.
It was
right?
amazing.
But it makes me think about, how do you stand out and make people remember you and want to stay connected with you? So Jai, maybe I'll turn to you first. What are ways to distinguish yourself so that people want to stay connected with you, especially as you're coming up in your career? How do you stand out when there's so many people that leaders and managers want to be connected to those folks?
Yeah, I'll say one of the strategies that I've used in my career has been, whether it's going to a conference or a virtual conference or something of this, someone that you really connected with, whether it was a speaker or another participant. And I make a note of some of the things that they say. And then usually when I follow up with them and I try to stay within a week to 2 weeks, I reference it back to something that they were saying, or if we were at an event together, some type of interaction. So it really helps solidify who it was that was talking to them. And I'll give an example. About a year or so ago, I was in New York and I was just, with a friend and we're going through Soho and I ran into an executive at Google that we had participated in one of our previous conferences. And so of course I knew he had no idea who I was in the context of, meeting me out on the street at that moment. But what I did was I referenced it back to the conference that I helped put together and engage with them. And as soon as I was able to do that, that helped kind of pull back to him who I was. And so I do things like that when I'm, networking or engaging with folks, is try to, pull out something that's really meaningful, whether it was something that they said during their presentation or whether it was something unique about, us being in California at a certain hotel or whatever the case is. But I generally try to reference it back to something that will help solidify, the moment that we had an opportunity to connect. And then from there, the other piece I'll just say is the advice is keeping in touch doesn't mean you're talking to someone every week or every couple of weeks or every month. Keeping in touch, I was told 1 to 2 times a year. You could just send an email. And so when you have that type of cadence and you just say, hey, just wanted to circle back, and you follow up off of the conversation you guys had previously, that helps solidify you in people's minds. And so for me, that's been really helpful as a tool.
It looks like we lost Miss Jade. So who wants to go?
I think so. So how about if we jump in and maybe offer our own perspectives on that question too? Tammy, you wanna give it a go?
It seems like Nick wants to go next.
Well, I believe, Jai, what you just said, you said 2 things that are real crucial. You're curious about individuals. So you took some bio, some background, and that's a brilliant thing to do when they're speaking, because nothing encourages somebody else but the fact that they feel listened to. And we don't listen very well in this society. We're too quick to rush to expression, whether that's on social media or blasting out emails, and not being thoughtful. Rather, we have to create some space and be curious about others. And so I think that's a really great example. And then you can follow up and say, I did listen to you. I do know what you believe in, what your values are, and can you help me with? Very, very powerful way to follow up and connect. Number 1. Number 2, don't make a big maintenance project out of it. I totally agree, Jai. It's touch bases. Don't even be formulaic. Don't say I'm going to do it 3 times a year, 4 times. Send them, if you find an article and they're an investment banker, send them the article and said, hey, thinking of you. Or send them a quick little text if they're recovering from a health issue. Like we know somebody, Jackie and I, who's recovering from brain surgery, checking in with her. Hey, how you feeling? Thinking of you. And that's it. And you're building these great connections by just being thoughtful and open-hearted. So
awesome. Can folks hear me?
Yeah, now we can.
Technology, you know, my laptop just totally shut off, so I'm on from my phone, but luckily I have awesome panelists that know what to do in the event that I'm unable. So Jai, thanks for sharing that insight. Nick, it sounds like you capped it off with some additional tips too.
Thanks, Jackie,
awesome.
for kicking it off.
Okay. So one other thing, I was actually going to turn to you, Nick. We've talked a lot about like what to do, what you do well, all those things. I would love for you to share with the group, where do you struggle? What are things that are really difficult to do when it comes to building meaningful relationships?
Well, I want to unpack a little bit more what Jackie said about how we can underestimate the gifts that we are bringing to the table. And at times, depending upon the accomplishments of the person on the other side, I may not feel worthy when in fact we're all equal. We all have something to offer each other, yet I'm prejudging that person by having this, or thinking they have this aura around them, or so I've been intimidated before, Jade, and it's closed me down to interactions because I put them on a pedestal. And I think it's a growth and maturity thing. The more we practice non-job interviews and encounters with others just to get to know them, I think the better we get. So yes, it can be intimidating. And I've failed also to ask the question behind the question. Here's another key, is where somebody will say, well, I enjoy going up north. And I'll say, well, I'll forget to ask, do you own a cabin up there? What draws you up there? Is there family activity up there? What are you passionate about doing once you get there? Those things to really get to know somebody. So rather in my mind, I come with a list of questions, and I get some, in my youth and exuberance, I used to get overly fixed on getting through my agenda.
Yeah.
So ask the question behind the question.
Such a good point. And I think something that you said without saying too is it takes practice, right? If that's something that's not going to just be perfect right off the bat. I know one of my first informational interviews with a person, they asked me like, what do you care about? What do you want to do with your career? And I was stuck. I wasn't prepared for them to ask me a question. Great. So I fumbled and I didn't really have much to say, but the next time around meeting with someone, I knew that question may come up. So I was learning, I took what I learned in that uncomfortable moment and made sure it didn't happen again. So I think, Nick, some of what you were saying is it takes practice and kind of take what you learn with each interaction with you.
It is, Jade. As they say in yoga, it's practice, not perfect.
Exactly.
Same with
awesome
interaction.
So I am going to leave. We have about 3 minutes left, and I kind of want to give the panelists an opportunity to just leave your mic drop moment with this group. So high school students, college students, people who are about to embark on launching into their careers. If you could go back, what would you want to hear? What are things that you want to leave them with? Let's start with Tammy, and then we'll go Jai, Nick, and we'll wrap up with Jackie. No pressure.
No pressure. So for me, if I was to start over, I would say yes more. I know we heard the panelists earlier or the speakers earlier in today talk about that. I'm an introvert. I am super self-conscious. Jade asked me to do this 2 months ago, and probably about 3 or 4 years ago, I just started saying yes. And so when she asked me, I was like, dang it, Jade, I don't want to. Like, I get so nervous. And but I've learned it's okay. People want to be engaged with you. And like Nick was saying, is you have more to offer than often you give yourself credit for. And you're just always learning. And I guess for me, I think it would be to trust the leaders around me and trust my peers when they say, do you want to do this? Or you should try this, or you should interview for this, is just say yes. They have confidence in you, trust them. fake it till you make it, right? Just give it a try. You never know what you can accomplish if you don't try it. And so I would be more out there.
Yeah, Tammy, it's so funny. I remember the day you told me that phrase, say yes, keep saying yes. We were like in Egan or something on a patio, and it transformed my career. I wouldn't be where I am today without that insight of say yes more. Our inclinations to say no a ton, because so many things are uncomfortable, but it's such a good point. Lean into the yes. Awesome. All right, Nick, thoughts?
I would say Jackie and I had a great discussion about what are the 3 things that we would try to develop, that we're continuing to develop. And we broke them down to number 1, awareness, which is look around you, be aware of how you're feeling going into a mentoring discussion. Do a little deep breathing, feel your feet in your shoes, get present. Second, what you said, Jade, what are your beliefs? What do you believe in? No, be clear on who you are and what you stand for. For instance, no matter whether you agree with his politics or not, Joe Biden during his campaign believed in decency, unity, and national healing. And you heard those 3 values come out in every speech. So believe in yourself, but be clear on your beliefs. And last but not least, be curious. Question behind the question, who is this person and what do they stand for? And go in with a plan to cultivate that relationship. So
awesome. Jackie. Actually, we're going to go Jai, then Jackie. Okay. I'm giving Jackie some time to think too.
All right.
So I think pulling from what Nick was just saying, and also Tammy in terms of saying yes, I think, not to be anxious. I think my entire life growing up, I'd see my friends getting these great jobs and stuff. And I always felt like, well, what am I doing? And, I went to school for political science and my plan was to go to law school, and understanding it's not about the destination, it's about the journey. And so, I've worked in all these different careers and none of them are anything that I was studying and intending to do when I graduated from college. But it was all serendipitous. And I just took these opportunities when someone said, are you interested in doing this? I said, yes. And all of that has led me to realizing that I'm really passionate about investing in communities and learning and working with communities every day. And so again, not to be anxious about feeling like you have to have it all figured out, because that's the whole beauty of it is, as you're on the journey, you'll realize maybe this is something that you like to do. Maybe you want to pivot, but really opening yourself to that opportunity and not feeling pressure like you need to have it all figured out yet, because you don't.
Awesome. Great points, Jai. Jackie, take it away.
Final thought. Love everything that's been said and couldn't agree with all the points more. Last thing I would add to that is, again, active community, super generous, ask for help, and at the end of that, practice gratitude. Make sure that you are reconnecting with those folks that have offered you something. Practice gratitude at the moment. Respond with a thank you note, handwritten thank you note. And that will not only, spread the great vibe of gratitude in the world, but it also, again, differentiates you from a lot of other folks.
And when in doubt, run across the street with no shoes on, right, Jackie?
Always.
That defined Tammy's character to me. Passionate.
Awesome. Well, I want.
Jay, do you mind if I just make one recommendation? Because I'd be remiss if I didn't.
Go for it.
A little homework. You know me.
Okay, right. Send them home with something.
A book that changed my life when I was a teenager, going into college. I've reread it. I bought it for my kids, and I've taken them off for steak dinner to discuss it, each individually. How to Win Friends and Influence People. Dale Carnegie. And they have a teen version of it too. You'll find 21,000 reviews of it on Amazon. But How to Win Friends and Influence People. It will give you the golden nuggets of relationship building.
Awesome.
Practice. So
we've got some reading to do in snowy Minnesota this winter. I totally get it. Awesome. Well, thank you again for this group. We probably could have done this for 3 hours with the awesome wisdom and insight you all had. But unfortunately, folks have to get back to class and stuff like that. So I am going to cut it. and turn it back to Anita. Thank you for dealing with my technical difficulties and sharing your insights and doing just such an awesome job. Thank you so much, panel.